What's going on, guys? It's your boy Distant Coder, and welcome back to another episode of answering your rulings questions. So you guys gave me a lot of comments to go through in the last video, so I went through them, picked out the best ones, and I'm gonna answer those for you guys in today's video. So just before we get started, don't forget that if you want to take part, leave your ruling questions in the comments of this video, and I'll make sure to go through them for the next video. Alright guys, so let's get right into it. So, for the very first ruling question of the day, we have a question from Night Hauntings Yu-Gi-Oh! And they ask, if I negate Apollousa's effect after she gains the attack, will she keep her attack or will she go to 0? So, when it comes to an effect where a monster boosts its own attack, if its effect gets negated and the monster is only able to boost its own attack and not another monster via its own effect, so something like Apollousa, something like Dante Traveler of the Burning Abyss, if their effects get negated, they will lose the attack boost that they have been granted. Afterwards, if they are no longer negated, the boost will not be returned. So in the case of Apollousa, Bow of the Goddess, if her effects are negated, she will go back to 0 stats because question mark stats are undefined, but on the field, if they are not boosted by a certain other effect, they are considered 0. So in the case where Apollousa gets her effects negated, she will go back to 0 attack, and after she is not negated anymore, she will not regain the attack boost that she gave to herself via her own effect. Alright, so this next question comes to us from Waleed Wahabi, and they ask, can you chain Ghost Bell to Drytron's effects in the hand, as they include the effect to special summon from hand or graveyard? So, in the case of Drytron monsters, with the exception of one single one, and I'll get into it, you cannot Ghost Bell the effect of the Drytron monsters in the hand for the very simple reason that when they activate in the hand, even though they can technically summon themselves from hand or graveyard, there is no instance in which a Drytron monster that activates in the hand will at any point summon itself from the grave, because if you activate the effect of, say, Drytron Alpha in the hand and then it gets discarded by a card effect, it'll simply resolve without effect. It won't summon itself from the graveyard. So there's no instance in which the Alpha that activated in the hand will be summoning itself from the graveyard in any instance. Now, the only exception of the Drytron monster you can bell while it's in the hand is the effect of Drytron Gamma, because Gamma contains the effect where after it summons itself from the hand, it can summon a Drytron monster from the graveyard. So for that reason, you can always Ghost Bell a Drytron Gamma in the hand, but all the other Drytrons, you cannot Ghost Bell them while they're activating in the hand. Alright, this next question is also a Drytron related one. It comes from Steel, and they ask, ruling for Benten being tributed for cost and then getting banished before the resolution of the chain. Does Benten get the effect? So basically the interaction they're asking is, say I use the effect of Drytron Alpha and I tribute Cyber Angel Benten from my hand or field in order to activate the Alpha, and as Chainlink 2 after the Alpha's effect, I activate DD Crow, banishing my opponent's Benten from the graveyard. So in this instant, what's going to happen is the Alpha will tribute the Benten, and then the DD Crow will target the Benten, Chain will resolve backwards, DD Crow will banish the Benten, and then the Alpha will resolve summoning itself. In a new chain, they're asking if Benten is allowed to activate its effect. So basically, we know that there is a rule implemented in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where cards with a trigger effect must be in their trigger location in order to activate their effect. So basically what this means is the location where it met its trigger is where it needs to be at the point where it would activate. In this instance, Benten met its trigger once it was tributed and sent to the graveyard, meaning the location at which it met its trigger is in the graveyard. So it must be in the graveyard at the point where it would activate in order to successfully activate. Now, because DD Crow banished the Benten from the graveyard and the Benten is no longer in the graveyard where it met its trigger, it will not be in its trigger location in order to activate. So in this instance, the Cyber Angel Benten will not be able to activate its effect after the resolution of Alpha's effect. Alright, so this next question comes to us from Nils, and they ask a ruling question: are you allowed to use Fog Blade on an unaffected monster such as Blackwing Full Armor Master? And if so, is the opponent allowed to attack the equipped monster? So basically, in this situation, what will happen is, yes, it is legal to activate Fog Blade targeting Full Armor Master, because it is still legal to target an unaffected monster by a card effect. That's not something that being unaffected will prevent you from doing. So in the case where you would Fogblade a monster that is unaffected by the effect of Fogblade, all the effects that Fogblade has that affect that monster will simply not affect that monster because it's unaffected. So in this instance, a Blackwing Full Armor Master is still able to attack and still able to activate its effects without any issue. However, the other effect of Fogblade that prevents other monsters from attacking that monster doesn't affect the monster that is under the effect of Fogblade. It, however, affects other monsters that would attempt to attack it. So for that reason, that effect will still be applied to other monsters despite the fact that the Blackwing Full Armor Master is unaffected. So if you Fogblade Full Armor Master, it can attack, it can activate its effects, but other monsters cannot attack the Blackwing Full Armor Master because of Fogblade's effect. Okay, so this next ruling question comes to us from Ian Hancock, and they ask, can I kaiju Utopic Zexal after it detaches a material so I can't activate any effects? So basically, the way Utopic Zexal works is that after it detaches an Xyz material, the opponent cannot activate any cards or effects for the rest of the turn. A kaiju monster that has the effect where it can tribute the opponent's monster in order to special summon itself to that opponent's field is not an activated effect. So because it is not an effect that specifically activates, they can still use that effect to summon a kaiju monster to the opponent's side of the field by tributing the opponent's Utopic Zexal or any monster that they may have, because Zexal specifically prevents card and effect activations, of which a kaiju monster's effect to summon itself from the hand does not activate, so they can still do it even under the effect of Utopic Zexal. Alright, so this next ruling question comes to us from Skykin, and they ask, hi Coder, can you explain how mandatory effects work exactly? Example, how can something like Traptrix Myrmelio's second effect activate even if the opponent controls no spell or trap cards? I get that it's mandatory and it must be activated, but what does the monster target? So basically, when it comes to mandatory effects, even if the effect cannot legally be resolved, it must activate specifically because it is a mandatory effect. So in the case of something like Traptrix Myrmelio, if it's special summon, it targets an opponent's spell trap card in order to destroy it. And it is a mandatory effect, and it will still activate even if the opponent doesn't have any spell or trap cards on the field. In this instance, basically it won't target anything and it'll simply resolve without effect, but it still needs to activate and needs to resolve. Another alternative to this would be something along the lines of Sangan. Sangan is a mandatory search effect to add a monster with 1500 or less attack from the deck to the hand. In the case where you do not have any legal targets for the Sangan will still activate, and it's not an illegal activation. It simply will not resolve successfully after its effect, at the point at which its effect would resolve, I should say, specifically because you don't have any targets, but because it's mandatory, it must still activate even if it cannot resolve. Alright, so this next question comes to us from Nathan Gill, and they ask, if I summon a monster that has a negate effect and my opponent attempts to negate the summon, can I activate the negation effect of that monster, or is it still not considered on the field? So essentially, the cards I'll be using for this example are going to be something along the lines of Cyber Dragon Infinity and Evilzar Lagia. So I attempt to Xe summon Cyber Dragon Infinity, which can detach a material to negate a card or effect. My opponent attempts to negate the summon of my Cyber Dragon Infinity with the effect of Evilzar Lagia. In this instance, I am not legally allowed to activate the effect of Cyber Dragon Infinity because the monster is not yet considered to have successfully been summoned, and a monster that is not successfully summoned cannot activate its on-field effect. So in that situation, I cannot legally detach from my Cyber Dragon Infinity to negate the effect of the Evilzar Lagia. And now, a very interesting interaction with something that comes up like this is, say for example, the Infinity is the only monster that I would have on my field, and my opponent activates the effect of Evilzar Lagia. I am legally allowed to chain Psy-Frame Gear Gamma from my hand, specifically because I am not considered to control a monster, period. Because if the Infinity, this is in the case where the Infinity is the only monster I would have, because it is not yet successfully summoned, I am not considered to be controlling a monster. So in this instance, I would be legally allowed to Gamma my opponent's Lagia, and I think that's a very, very neat interaction and a good one to know. Okay, this next question comes to us from Connor Palazzo, and they ask, Dimension Shifter versus Artifact Lancia. Are cards banished or not banished? So in the majority of cases in Yu-Gi-Oh!, if two cards have a conflicting effect where one says you do this and one says you don't do this, so in the case of Dimension Shifter and Lancia, Shifter says all cards sent to the graveyard are banished instead, and Lancia says no cards are banished at all. In an instance where two cards are basically contradicting each other, they cancel each other out. So in the instance where Dimension Shifter and Artifact Lancia are both under effect at the same time, cards that would be sent to the graveyard are simply that, sent to the graveyard, because Lancia says that you cannot banish cards. So for this reason, because they both essentially tell you to do the opposite thing, they essentially cancel each other out, and you are not able to banish any cards for the rest of the turn. Alright, this next ruling question comes to us from Cameron McGuire, and they ask, if my opponent activates Triple Tactics Talent and declares the effect to take control of my monster, can I activate Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring to negate the effect? So, Ash Blossom reads that it can negate any card or effect that includes one of the following effects. And the 3 effects that it can negate are some that would add from deck to hand, send from deck to grave, or special summon a monster from the deck. Now, the reason why people think that you can Ash Blossom Triple Tactics Talents effect to take a monster is because the card does include an effect to draw. However, the way Triple Tactics Talents reads is that when you activate the card, you select one of the 3 effects and you are activating specifically that card effect. So for that reason, if you are activating the specific card effect to take an opponent's monster, you're not activating a card effect that does any of the things that Ash Blossom can negate. So whether you're using the effect to take a monster or to look at the opponent's hand to shuffle a card back, Ash Blossom cannot be chained to either of those 2 effects of Triple Tactics Talent. You can only chain Ash Blossom to the Triple Tactics Talent effect to draw cards, and this is real for any card such as, like, for example, Stratos, that has an effect to either add or either pop. If they activate the pop effect, you cannot Ash Blossom that effect. So that's true for a multitude of cards that have a similar sort of effect like this. So anyways, guys, that's going to be it for today's Answering Your Ruling Questions video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys learned something new. Don't forget to leave your ruling questions in the comment section of this video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. So have a good one, guys. Peace.